Welcome to the Aviation Air Law and Regulations FAA PPL Course 4, 2026. Do you want to fly planes, but the legal rules feel too hard to understand right now? I am here to help you pass your test, safely and easily, without any big headaches. These questions come with full explanations, which will help you get your certification on the first try. Please leave suggestions in the comment section below, so we can improve this course for everyone. Also, remember to check the description below, so you can get the full course very easily today. Let us start with the basic rules, because you need them to fly a plane safely today. The Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA, makes all the rules for every pilot in the sky. We call these rulist Federal Aviation Regulations, which you must know well to stay safe. In this first part, we will talk about pilot rules, and what you can legally do. As a student pilot, you are just starting out, so you have some strict rules to follow. You cannot carry any passengers with you, because you are still learning how to fly planes safely. You also cannot fly planes for money, or take any jobs that pay you to fly. Once you pass your big test, you will become a real private pilot with more freedom. A private pilot can finally fly with friends, but you still cannot fly just for a job. You can share the cost of the flight, like paying for gas and rental, with your friends. But you must pay your fair share, meaning you pay equally for all the flying costs. You also need to keep your pilot certificate with you every single time you fly a plane. Along with your certificate, you must bring your photo ID and your current medical certificate too. To fly a plane, you must be healthy, so the FAA requires a valid medical certificate. A third-class medical certificate is usually what you need to fly as a private pilot safely. If you are under 40 years old, this medical certificate is good for a full 60 months. If you are 40 or older, it is only good for 24 months, so keep a check. There is another rule called Basic Med, which lets you fly without renewing your standard medical certificate. With Basic Med, you must visit a regular doctor and take a free online medical course every time. You can only fly planes holding up to 6 people. If you are flying under Basic Med rules, the plane cannot weigh more than 6,000 pounds. If you want to use the Basic Med rule, you also must stay under 18,000 feet, and you cannot fly faster than 250 knots. You must record your flight hours in a logbook, so you can prove you have enough experience. You only need to log the hours, if they count toward your next certificate or flight review. To keep carrying passengers, you must practice flying, and do 3 takeoffs and landings very recently. You have to do these 3 landings within the last 90 days, in the same plane type. If you want to fly with passengers at night, those 3 landings must be at a full stop. Night time for this rule starts 1 hour after sunset, and ends 1 hour before sunrise comes. Every 2 years, you must complete a flight review, to make sure your skills are still sharp. A flight review means 1 hour of flying, and 1 hour of talking with a flight instructor. If you do not pass this review, you simply keep training, and you try it again later. Read, learn, we need to practice, repeat, until you are fully ready to fly planes by yourself. You must be very careful with alcohol, because flying planes and drinking is a huge legal danger. You must wait at least 8 hours, from your last drink to the time you fly planes. Your blood alcohol level must be less than 0.04%, or you will lose your license completely. Even if 8 hours have passed, you cannot fly. If you still feel hungover or slightly sick, you also cannot fly if you take medicine, unless your flight doctor says it is totally safe. Before you fly anywhere, you must learn all the details about the flight you want to make. You need to check the weather reports, so you know the sky is clear and very safe. You must check how much fuel you need, and make sure you have extra fuel just in case. For a day flight, you need enough fuel to reach your spot, plus 30 minutes of extra flying. For a night flight, you must have enough extra fuel, for 45 minutes of safe flying time. You must also check the runway lengths at every airport you plan to visit on your trip. When you are flying in the sky, you must watch out and give way to other planes. An airplane in distress or having an emergency always has the right of way over everyone else. A balloon has the right of way over a glider, an airship, and any normal airplane too. A glider has right of way over an airship, and it beats a normal airplane also. If two planes are heading right at each other, both pilots must turn their planes to the right. If two planes are crossing paths, the plane on the right side gets to go first safely. When you are landing, the plane that is lower to the ground gets to land first always. But you must not use this lower rule just to cut in front of another flying plane. When you fly below 10,000 feet, you cannot fly faster than 250 knots ever. If you are under Class B airspace, the speed limit is only 200 knots for you. Class B airspace is near the biggest airports, where many large jets are flying around all day. The FAA organizes aircraft into groups, like categories and classes, so pilots know what they can fly. For a pilot, a category is a broad group, like an airplane, a rotorcraft, or a glider. A class is a smaller group within a category, like single-engine land or multi-engine land planes. Your pilot license tells you exactly which categories and classes you are legally allowed to fly today. You can actually drop things from a plane, as long as it does not hurt anyone below. You must take huge care to protect people, and stop any damage to property on the ground. During takeoff and landing, every person in the plane must wear a seatbelt and a shoulder harness. As the main pilot, you must tell all your passengers exactly how to use their safety belts. You must wear your own seatbelt at all times, while you are sitting at the pilot station. You must fly high enough so you can land safely if your engine suddenly stops working today. If you are flying over a crowded city, you must stay 1,000 feet above the buildings. You must also stay 2,000 feet away from the buildings horizontally to keep everyone very safe. If you are flying over open water or empty country areas, the rules are much more relaxed. You can fly down to 500 feet, as long as you stay away from any people. You must stay 500 feet away from any person, any boat, or any car down there. Sometimes pilots make small mistakes, so the FAA has a system to report these errors without punishment. This is called the Aviation Safety Reporting System, and it helps everyone learn from other pilot mistakes. If you break a small rule by accident, you can file a report quickly to protect yourself. You must file this report within 10 days to get protection from losing your pilot license totally. This protection only works if the mistake was an honest accident and not an intentional bad choice. If a real accident happens, you must tell the National Transportation Safety Board right away, without delay. An accident means someone gets seriously hurt, or the plane takes some very heavy damage during flight. An incident is a smaller problem, and you only need to report it if they ask you. But there are some serious incidents, like a fire during flight, that you must report right away. If your flight control system breaks in the air, you must report that scary problem immediately too. As a private pilot, you will mostly fly using visual flight rules, which means you need good weather. You must be able to see clearly, so you do not crash into other planes or clouds. In Class E airspace below 10,000 feet, you need 3 miles of visibility to fly safely. You must stay 500 feet below the clouds, and 1,000 feet above the clouds always. You also must stay 2,000 feet away, horizontally, from any cloud you see in the sky. This is called the basic VFR weather rule, and you must memorize it for your flight test. Point 1. What documents must you always carry with you when you are flying a plane as a pilot? You must carry your pilot certificate, a photo ID, and your current medical certificate. The FAA requires these 3 documents to prove you are legal and healthy enough to fly today. Point 2. Can a private pilot charge passengers money for the total cost of a fun weekend flight? No, a private pilot cannot fly for hire, but you can share the costs with your friends. You are only allowed to pay your equal share for the fuel and the plane rental fees. Point 3. How long is a third-class medical certificate valid if you are currently under 40 years old? It is valid for 60 calendar months, which is exactly 5 years from your exam date. This long period helps young pilots fly safely, without seeing a doctor every single year. Point 4. What are the rules for drinking alcohol before you act as a pilot in command of an airplane? You must wait 8 hours after drinking, and your blood alcohol level must be under 0.04%. Alcohol severely affects your brain, making it extremely dangerous to fly planes even after a few drinks. 5. What is the minimum extra fuel required when you are flying a plane during the daytime? You must have enough fuel to reach your destination, plus 30 minutes of extra cruising fuel. This extra fuel acts as a safety buffer, in case you face bad weather or strong winds. Point 6. If you want to carry passengers at night, what recent flight experience do you absolutely need? You must make 3 full-stop landings at night, within the previous 90 days in the same plane. Night flying requires extra skill, so the FAA wants you to practice full stops to stay safe. Point 7. Which flying aircraft always has the absolute right of way over every other aircraft in the sky? An aircraft in distress or an emergency always has the right of way over all other planes. When someone is facing a real emergency, everyone else must move out of their way immediately. Point 8. If 2 airplanes are approaching each other head-on, what action must both pilots take to avoid crashing? Both pilots must immediately alter their course to the right, to pass each other safely. Turning right is the universal rule, which prevents pilots from accidentally turning into each other in panic. Point 9. What is the maximum speed you can fly when you are below 10,000 feet in altitude? You cannot fly faster than 250 knots when you are under 10,000 feet. This speed limit keeps planes slow enough so pilots can see each other and avoid a crash. Point 10. What must you do if your airplane engine fails while you are flying over a crowded city? You must fly at least 1,000 feet above the highest obstacle in that crowded city area. This safe altitude gives you enough time to glide and find a safe spot to land smoothly. Point 11. When do you and your passengers need to wear a seatbelt while inside the flying airplane? Everyone must wear a seatbelt during taxi, takeoff, and every single landing of the flight. Most accidents happen near the ground, so seatbelts keep everyone perfectly safe during these critical times. Point 12. If a small airplane and a large glider are crossing paths, which aircraft has the right of way? The glider has the right of way because it does not have an engine to move quickly. Slower aircraft without engines always have priority over faster airplanes that can easily turn away. Point 13. How long do you have to report an aircraft accident to the National Transportation Safety Board? You must notify the board immediately, as soon as an aircraft accident happens to you. They need to investigate accidents right away, before any important clues or evidence get lost forever. Point 14. What exactly makes an aviation event an accident, instead of just a minor aviation incident today? An accident happens when someone gets seriously injured, or the airplane receives substantial structural damage. Incidents are minor problems, but accidents involve real harm to people or heavy damage to the airplane. Point 15. What are the basic VFR weather minimums for flying in Class E airspace below 10,000 feet? You need 3 miles of visibility, and you must stay far away from all the clouds. You must stay 500 feet below, 1,000 feet above, and 2,000 feet horizontally from clouds. 16. Can you drop an object from an airplane in flight if you are flying over a field? Yes, you can drop objects safely, as long as you do not hurt people or damage property. You are legally responsible for whatever you drop, so you must watch the ground very carefully. Point 17. What is a flight review, and how often must a private pilot complete one to keep flying? It is a training session with an instructor, and you must complete it every 24 months. This review includes 1 hour of flying and 1 hour of ground learning to keep skills sharp. 18. What happens if you fail a flight review with your local certified flight instructor today? You do not lose your license, you just log it as training, and try again later. The instructor will simply help you practice more, until you are safe and auto fly alone again. 19. Under the basic med rules, what is the maximum number of people your airplane is allowed to carry? You can only fly an airplane that holds a maximum of 6 people, including the pilot. Basic med is for smaller planes, so it restricts you from flying large jets with many passenger seats. Thank you for reading this first part, and please leave your suggestions in the comments section below. Do not forget to check the video description to get the full course and pass your test. Let us move on to part 2, where we will learn all about the different airspace classes. The ski is divided into different sections, just like we have invisible roads up in the air. We use letters to name these airspaces, starting from Class A all the way to Class G. Class A is very high up, starting at 18,000 feet above the ground everywhere you fly. You cannot fly in Class A airspace, unless you have an instrument rating and an equipped plane. Class B airspace surrounds the biggest airports, where huge passenger jets take off and land all day. You must get clear permission from air traffic control before you enter Class B airspace safely. Your plane also needs special equipment, like an ADS-B out transmitter, to fly inside Class B airspace. Class C airspace is for medium airports, which are busy but not as huge as Class B. To enter Class C, you must call air traffic control, and they must say your plane's tail number. Once they say your call sign clearly, you are legally allowed to enter Class C airspace right away. Class D airspace is for smaller airports, but they still have a working control tower to help. Just like Class C, you must call the tower, and wait for them to say your tail number. Class E airspace covers almost everything else, and it is strictly controlled airspace for your safety. Most of the time, Class E starts at 1,200 feet, high above the ground. You do not need special permission to fly into Class E airspace, if the weather is clear. Class G airspace is completely uncontrolled, meaning no air traffic controller is watching over you directly. This uncontrolled airspace stays close to the ground, usually ending at 1,200 feet high. Because nobody is controlling Class G, the weather rules are much more relaxed for a private pilot. You always need a working transponder if you fly in Class B or Class C airspace areas. A transponder helps radar towers see you by sending out a strong signal from your flying airplane. There is a rule called the 30-mile veil, which surrounds every single Class B airport perfectly. If you fly inside this 30-mile circle, your plane must have an ADS-B out system turned on. There are also special use airspaces, where you must be extremely careful before flying your plane. A prohibited area is completely closed, and you are never allowed to fly your plane through it. A restricted area is also very dangerous, because the military might be shooting weapons in the sky. You can only fly through a restricted area if the controlling agency gives you permission to enter. A warning area is just like a restricted area, but it sits out over the open ocean. A military operations area, or MOA, is where fast military jets practice their flying combat maneuvers daily. You are allowed to fly through an MOA, but you really should avoid it to stay safe. Always check your map for alert areas, where you might find many student pilots practicing their flying. Temporary flight restrictions, or TFRs, pop up when the president travels, or during big sports games. You must always check the latest news to make sure no TFRs are blocking your flight path. Breaking a TFR rule is a huge mistake, and fighter jets might fly up to intercept you. 1. What type of airspace is found at 18,000 feet, all the way up to flight level 60? It is called Class A airspace, and it is strictly for instrument flying. You need special training and an IFR flight plan to legally enter this high-altitude airspace. Point 2. Do you need permission to enter Class B airspace if you are a private pilot today? Yes, you must hear them say you are cleared to enter Class B airspace. Since it is the busiest airspace, they must give you clear permission before you cross the line. Point 3. What must happen before you enter Class C airspace to stay perfectly legal during your flight? The controller must reply to you, using your airplane's specific tail number. If they just say aircraft calling standby, you are not allowed to enter the airspace yet. Point 4. Does Class D airspace require you to have a working transponder inside your flying airplane? No, a transponder is not strictly required, just to enter basic Class D airspace. However, you must establish two-way radio communication with the control tower before you fly inside. Point 5. Is Class E airspace controlled or uncontrolled when you are flying as a private pilot? Class E airspace is controlled airspace, even if you do not talk to anyone. Air traffic control handles the instrument planes here, so weather minimums keep you safe from them. 6. What is the only type of uncontrolled airspace that you will find in the United States? Class G airspace is the only completely uncontrolled airspace available for pilots today. This airspace is usually close to the ground, so controllers cannot reach you with their radar. Point 7. What is a Mode C transponder, and why do you need it to fly safely? It is a device that tells air traffic control exactly how high you are flying. You need this to fly in or above Class B and Class C airspaces safely. Point 8. What does the ADS-B out system do when you are flying your plane in the sky? It constantly sends your GPS location to the ground stations and other airplanes around you. This system helps prevent mid-air crashes by showing everyone exactly where you are flying today. Point 9. Can you legally fly your private airplane through a marked prohibited area on your map? No, you are never allowed to fly your plane through a prohibited area. These areas protect important places like the White House, and entering them is a huge crime. Point 10. What happens inside a restricted area that makes it dangerous for private pilots to enter? The military might be firing invisible missiles or shooting big guns in that active area. You must get permission from the controlling agency before you try to fly through this danger. Point 11. How is a warning area completely different from a standard restricted area on your map? A warning area is exactly the same, but it sits out over the open ocean waters. It has the same exact dangers as a restricted area, but over international ocean waters. Point 12. Are you allowed to fly through a military operations area without asking for permission first? Yes, you can fly through it, but you really should use extreme caution inside it. Military jets fly very fast in these areas, and they might not easily see your small plane. Point 13. What kind of activity will you usually find when you fly near an alert area? You will find lots of student pilots practicing their flying skills in that mapped area. Everyone needs to keep a sharp lookout, because student pilots are still learning how to fly safely. Point 14. Why might the FAA suddenly create a temporary flight restriction in your local flying area? They create TFRs for VIP movement, large sporting events, or natural disasters like huge wildfires. You must always check for TFRs before you fly, because they pop up very quickly unannounced. Point 15. What is the Mode C veil that surrounds large Class B airports on your map? It is a 30-mile circle, requiring you to have a Mode C transponder and ADS-B out. Even if you do not enter Class B, you must use this equipment inside the big circle. Point 16. If an air traffic controller says stand by without your tail number, can you enter Class C? No, you must stay outside the airspace until they say your exact tail number loudly. Establishing communication requires them to acknowledge you specifically before you can cross the invisible border. 17. Where does Class A airspace normally end when you fly extremely high into the sky? Class A airspace goes all the way up to flight level 600 today. This means it ends at 60,000 feet, and above that, it becomes class again. 18. Do you need a special clearance to fly inside controlled Class E airspace during clear weather? No, a private pilot flying VFR does not need clearance to fly in Class airspace. You only need to follow the basic VFR weather rules to legally stay in this airspace safely. 19. What must you do before flying into Class D airspace to avoid breaking the law? You must establish two-way radio communication with the local control tower before crossing the line. You must talk to them first, so they can help separate you from other landing airplanes safely. Please check the video description below, so you can easily grab the full course today. Welcome to part 3 of our course, where we will focus on your airplane and the safety gear you need. Every plane must be airworthy, which means it is safe and legal to fly in the sky today. As the pilot in command, you are the person responsible for checking that the plane is ready. You must remember a simple word, ARROW, to check all the required documents inside the plane. The letter A stands for the Airworthiness Certificate, which must be visible to everyone inside the cabin. R is for the Registration Certificate, which proves who owns the airplane and that it is officially registered. The second R stands for the radio station license, but you only need this for international flights. O is for the operating handbook, which contains all the specific limits and rules for your plane. W stands for the weight and balance data, because you must never fly a plane that is too heavy. Your airplane also needs regular checkups, just like a car needs a mechanic to look at it. Every 12 months, the plane must have an annual inspection, performed by a highly trained mechanic. If you fly the plane for hire or flight instruction, you also need a 100-hour inspection. You cannot skip these inspections, or your plane becomes illegal to fly until the mechanic signs the book. There are also special checks for the transponder, which must happen every 24 calendar months. The pitted static system, which tells you your speed and altitude, also needs a check every 2 years. If you find something broken on your plane, you must follow a strict process before taking off. First, check if the broken part is required by the FAA for a basic day flight. You also check the equipment list from the maker of your plane to see if it is necessary. If the part is not required, you must either remove it or deactivate the broken switch. Then, you must put a small sticker that says inoperative over the broken part or switch. This tells any other pilot using the plane that the equipment does not work right now. For day flying, you must have specific equipment, and we use the word tomato flames to remember. You need a tachometer for the engine, and an oil pressure gauge to monitor the engine health. An altimeter is required to show your height, and a manifold pressure gauge for some complex engines. You also need an airspeed indicator, and a temperature gauge if the engine is liquid-cooled. An oil temperature gauge is vital, along with a fuel gauge for every single tank. You must have a landing gear position lights, if your plane has wheels that move up and down. An anti-collision light system, like a flashing strobe or beacon, is required for all modern planes. A magnetic compass is needed to show your direction, and an emergency locator transmitter must be installed. Finally, you need a seat belt for every person, and a shoulder harness for those in the front. If you plan to fly at night, you need even more equipment to stay safe in the dark. We use the word flaps to remember these extra items for your night flying adventures today. You must have fuses or circuit breakers, and a landing light if you fly for hire. An anti-collision light system is required, along with position lights which are red, green, and white. You also need a reliable source of power, like an alternator or a battery, for the lights. Inspect, check, we need to repair, repeat, to keep your airplane in the best shape possible. 1. Who is primarily responsible for maintaining an airplane in an airworthy and safe condition? The owner or the operator of the airplane is responsible for ITS maintenance. While the owner manages the upkeep, the pilot must still verify it is safe before flying. Point 2. What document must be displayed at the cabin or cockpit entrance, so it is visible? The airworthiness certificate must be displayed, so that passengers and pilots can see it. This certificate remains valid as long as the plane receives all its required maintenance and inspections. Point 3. Does an airplane registration certificate ever expire, or is it good for the life of the plane? An airplane registration certificate expires every 7 years, and it must be renewed by the owner. The FAA updated this rule recently, to make sure their database of plane owners stays very accurate. Point 4. If you fly your own private plane for fun, do you need a 100-hour inspection? No, the 100-hour inspection is only required if you carry passengers for hire. Flight schools must use this rule, but a private owner only needs a big annual inspection every year. Point 5. What should you do if you find the landing light is broken before a daytime flight? You must disable the light and place a sticker saying inoperative on the light switch. Since a landing light is not required for day flight, you can fly if you mark it broken. Point 6. How often must the emergency locator transmitter battery be replaced, according to the FAA rules? You must replace it after 1 hour of cumulative use, or when half its useful life expires. This ensures the battery is strong enough to send a rescue signal if you ever have a crash. Point 7. Can you fly an airplane if the annual inspection expired 2 days ago but you feel safe? No, you cannot fly an airplane with an expired annual inspection without a special flight permit. You must contact the FAA to get a ferry permit, just to fly it to a mechanic. Point 8. What does the T in the memory aid tomato flames stand for, regarding engine equipment? The T stands for the tachometer, which shows how fast the engine is spinning every minute. You need this to set your power correctly, and to make sure the engine is running healthy. Point 9. Are shoulder harnesses required for every single seat, in a plane made before the year 1978? No, shoulder harnesses are only required for the front seats, in older airplanes used today. Newer planes must have them for every seat, but older planes only need them for the pilots. Point 10. What is a minimum equipment list, and do all small training airplanes have one? It is a specific list that allows you to fly with broken gear, but most small planes do not. Most small planes use the standard FAA rules, instead of a complex and expensive individual MEL list. Point 11. How many hours of use triggers the requirement to change the battery in an ELT? If the ELT has been turned on for 1 cumulative hour, you must change the battery. Even small tests add up over time, so you must track how long the unit has been active. Point 12. What color is the position light, located on the right wingtip of every flying airplane? The position light on the right wingtip is green, while the left wingtip light is red. This helps other pilots see which way you are moving when you are flying in the dark. Point 13. Do you need a clock with a second hand for a basic VFR flight during the day? No, a clock is not on the list of required equipment for a basic VFR daytime flight. While very helpful for navigation, the FAA does not legally require a clock for simple day flying. Point 14. What does the W stand for, in the AERO acronym for required airplane documents? The W stands for the weight and balance data, which is specific to that individual airplane. You must use the actual weight of your specific plane to calculate if it is safe to fly. Point 15. If a transponder check was done on May 10, 2024, when is the very next check due? The next transponder check will be due no later than May 31 in the year 2026. The FAA uses calendar months, so the last day of the month it expires. 16. Can a pilot perform any maintenance on their own airplane, or must a mechanic do everything? A pilot can perform preventive maintenance, like changing the oil or adding air to the tires. You must hold at least a private pilot certificate, and you must record the work in the logbook. 17. What is an airworthiness directive, and do you have to follow it to stay legal? An AD is a mandatory fix issued by the FAA, and you must follow it completely. These are like car recalls, but they are legally required before you can fly the plane again. 18. Why do you need a manifold pressure gauge, in some airplanes but not in others? You need it for engines that use a constant speed propeller, to measure the engine power. Most small training planes have a fixed propeller, so they do not need this extra engine gauge. 19. If you fly above 12,500 feet, when must the pilot use supplemental oxygen? The pilot must use oxygen if you stay at that high altitude for more than 30 minutes. This prevents hypoxia, which is a dangerous condition where your brain does not get enough oxygen. These questions come with full explanations, which will help you get your certification on the first try. Please leave suggestions in the comment section to improve. You can get the full course by checking the link in the description. In part 4, we will learn how to read the sky and plan your first long trip. Weather is the biggest reason for accidents in small planes, so you must understand the rules perfectly. As a private pilot, you will mostly fly under visual flight rules, also known as VFR flying. You must be able to see the ground and stay away from all clouds today. The weather rules change depending on how high you fly and what airspace you are in. When you fly below 10,000 feet, you usually need 3 miles of visibility to stay safe. You must also stay 500 feet below clouds, and 1,000 feet above clouds always. You need 2,000 feet of horizontal distance from any cloud you see in the sky. If you fly higher than 10,000 feet, the weather rules become much more strict for you. You will need 5 miles of visibility, because planes move much faster at these high altitudes. You must stay 1,000 feet below, and 1,000 feet above every cloud you find. You also need 1 full mile of horizontal distance from clouds when flying this high. When you plan a trip to a new airport, we call this a cross-country flight. A cross-country flight for your license must be a distance of more than 50 nautical miles. You must choose a safe altitude for your trip, based on the direction you are flying. If you fly east, between 0 and 179 degrees, you must fly at an odd altitude. This means you fly at 3,500, or 5,500 feet high. If you fly west, between 180 and 359 degrees, you must fly at an even altitude. This means you fly at 4,500, or 6,500 feet high. We call this the hemispherical rule, and it helps keep planes from hitting each other. You must also learn how to read a METAR, which is a coded weather report. A METAR tells you the current wind, visibility, and cloud height at a specific airport. You must also check the TAF, which is a forecast telling you the future weather. If the clouds are lower than 1,000 feet, you cannot land using basic VFR rules. If the visibility is less than 3 miles, the airport is considered to be in IFR conditions. You can ask for a special VFR clearance if the weather is just slightly below limits. This allows you to land with only 1 mile of visibility, if you stay clear of clouds. But you can only do this during the day, unless you have an instrument rating. Check, plan, we need to watch, repeat, to make sure every flight remains a safe one. Always have a backup plan, in case the weather turns bad while you are flying. If you see clouds getting lower, turn around immediately and land at a safe airport nearby. Never try to push through bad weather, because that is how pilots get into big trouble. 1. What is the standard visibility required for flying VFR below 10,000 feet in class? You must have at least 3 statute miles of visibility to fly safely and legally. This visibility allows you to see other airplanes and avoid them long before you get too close. Point 2. How far must you stay horizontally from clouds when flying below 10,000 feet in altitude? You must stay at least 2,000 feet away, horizontally from any clouds in the sky. This gap gives you enough time to see an airplane that might pop out of a cloud. Point 3. What are the visibility and cloud rules when you are flying above 10,000 feet MSL? You need 5 miles of visibility, and you must stay 1 mile away from clouds horizontally. Faster airplanes fly high, so you need more room and more visibility to stay very safe. Point 4. If you are flying on a magnetic course of 090 degrees, what altitude should you choose? You should fly at an odd altitude plus 500 feet, like 3,500 or 5,500 feet. Since 090 is an easterly heading, the law requires an odd altitude to separate opposite traffic. Point 5. What altitude should you fly at if your magnetic course for the trip is 270 degrees? You should fly at an even altitude plus 500 feet, like 4,500 or 6,500 feet. Since 270 is a westerly heading, you must fly at even altitudes to stay away from others. Point 6. At what altitude does the hemispherical rule start for pilots flying a VFR cross-country trip? The rule starts once you fly more than 3,000 feet above the ground's surface. Below 3,000 feet, you can fly at any altitude, as long as it is safe and legal. Point 7. What does the term ceiling mean when you are reading a weather report for an airport? A ceiling is the height of the lowest layer of clouds, broken or overcast, above the ground. Pilots need to know the ceiling to decide if they can stay below clouds during their flight. Point 8. What is the difference between a METAR and a TAF when you are checking the weather? A METAR is the current weather right now, while a TAF is a forecast for the future. You check the METAR for your takeoff, and the TAF to see what weather is coming later. Point 9. Can a student pilot request a special VFR clearance when the visibility is only 1 mile? No, a student pilot should avoid special VFR, as it is very dangerous for new pilots. While legal for private pilots, most flight instructors forbid students from using this rule for safety reasons. Point 10. What is the minimum visibility required to fly inside Class G airspace during the day? You only need 1 statute mile of visibility to fly in Class G during the day. Uncontrolled airspace has lower limits, but you must still stay completely clear of all the clouds. Point 11. If an airport has a ceiling of 800 feet, can you legally land VFR there? No, because VFR flight requires a ceiling of at least 1,000 feet for landing. If the clouds are lower than 1,000 feet, the airport becomes IF RAND closed to VFR. Point 12. What does the code OVC015 mean when you see it in a METAR weather report? It means the sky is overcast, with a solid cloud layer at 1,500 feet high. OVC stands for overcast, and the numbers represent hundreds of feet above the airport ground. Point 13. Why do you need more visibility when you fly above 10,000 feet in the sky? You need more visibility because airplanes fly much faster, at higher altitudes in the open sky. Higher speeds mean you have less time to react, so 5 miles of visibility is required there. 14. How much extra fuel must you carry for a night VFR flight to be perfectly legal? You must have enough fuel to reach your destination, plus 45 minutes of extra flying. Night flying is more complex, so the FAA requires 15 extra minutes compared to daytime flights. 15. What must you do before every flight to comply with the rule regarding pre-flight actions? You must become familiar with all available information concerning that specific flight you are taking. This includes weather, fuel needs, runway lengths, and any known traffic delays at your destination airport. 16. If you see the letters BR in a weather report, what kind of weather is happening? The letters BR stand for mist, which can lower your visibility while you are flying. It is a French abbreviation for mist, and it usually means the visibility is over 5/8 mile. 17. Can you fly through a cloud if you are a private pilot flying under VFR rules? No, you must stay clear of all clouds and never enter them while flying VFR. Entering a cloud without an instrument rating is very dangerous, as you can lose control quickly. 18. What is the definition of a cross-country flight for meeting your private pilot license requirements? It is a flight to a point more than 50 nautical miles from your original departure. You must land at an airport that is far away to prove you can navigate long distances. 19. What should you do if the weather starts to look bad while you are flying your plane? You should turn around or land at the nearest airport before the weather gets even worse. Waiting too long to make a decision is a common mistake that leads to very dangerous situations. Please leave suggestions in the comment section to improve this course. You can get the full course by checking the link in the description below. Welcome to part 5 of our course, where we will discuss how to stay safe during emergencies and unusual situations. Even with the best planning, things can sometimes go wrong while you are flying high in the sky. As a pilot, you must stay calm and follow your emergency checklists to handle any problem safely. The most important rule in any emergency is to aviate, navigate, and then communicate with others. Aviate means you must keep flying the airplane first, because stalling the plane is your biggest danger. Navigate means you should find a safe place to land, like a flat field or a nearby airport. Communicate means you talk to air traffic control, only after you have the airplane under total control. If your engine stops working, you must immediately pitch the airplane for its best glide speed. This speed allows you to stay in the air for the longest distance possible without power. You should then look for the best place to land, and try to restart the engine. Check the fuel selector, the mixture control, and the ignition switch to see if something was bumped. If the engine will not start, you must declare an emergency on the radio right away. Use the frequency 121.5, which is the international emergency channel for all pilots and controllers today. You should also change your transponder code to 7700, so every radar screen sees your emergency. If you have a radio failure and cannot talk, change your transponder code to 7600 instead. This tells the controllers that you can fly, but you cannot hear them or speak to them. If you are near a tower, they will use bright light gun signals to talk to you. A steady green light means you are cleared to land your airplane on the runway safely. A steady red light means you should keep circling, because it is not safe to land yet. A flashing red light means the airport is unsafe, and you should find another place to land. If you ever get lost, do not panic, but use the 4 C's to find your way. Climb higher to see more landmarks, circle to stay in one spot, and conserve your fuel immediately. Finally, communicate with air traffic control, and ask them for a radar vector to the nearest airport. They are happy to help you, and it is much better than running out of fuel. Wake turbulence is another danger, caused by large jets moving through the air ahead of you. These invisible spinning vortices can flip a small airplane over, if you get too close behind them. To avoid them, always stay above the flight path of the large jet in front of you. When landing behind a big jet, stay high and land past the point where the jet touched down. When taking off behind a big jet, lift off before the jet's rotation point and stay above it. Stay safe, stay calm, we need to focus, repeat, until you are back on the ground safely. 1. What is the very first thing you should do, if your engine suddenly stops working? You must immediately pitch the airplane, to maintain the best glide speed for your plane. Best glide speed gives you the most time and distance, to find a safe spot for landing. Point 2. What is the international emergency radio frequency, that every pilot should know by heart today? The international emergency frequency is 121.5 MHz, and it is monitored by almost everyone. Using this frequency alerts all nearby pilots and controllers that you need help right away. Point 3. Which transponder code should you enter if you have a total radio failure while flying? You should switch your transponder to code 7600 to signal a lost radio connection. This alerts the controller that you cannot hear them, so they can clear other planes away. Point 4. What transponder code indicates a general emergency, such as an engine failure or a fire? You should use transponder code 7700 to show a general emergency on the radar screen. This makes your plane's target flash on the controller's screen, so they give you immediate attention. Point 5. If a control tower shines a steady green light at you, what does it mean? A steady green light signal means that you are cleared to land your airplane. Since you cannot hear the radio, the tower uses these colored lights to give you instructions. Point 6. What should you do if you see a flashing red light coming from the control tower? A flashing red light means the airport is unsafe, and you should not land there. You must stay away and wait for a green light, or go to a different airport. Point 7. What are the 4 C's you should follow if you ever become lost during a flight? The 4 C's are climb, communication, confess, and comply with the instructions you receive. These steps help you get help from radar controllers before you're out of fuel or light. Point 8. Where is wake turbulence the strongest, when a large airplane is flying through the sky? Wake turbulence is strongest behind heavy airplanes that are flying slowly with a clean wing. These vortices sink slowly, so you must stay above the flight path of the larger airplane. Point 9. How can you avoid wake turbulence when you are landing behind a large passenger jet? You should stay above the jet's path and land further down the runway than it did. This ensures you stay above the sinking air vortices that the large jet leaves behind it. Point 10. What does a steady red light signal mean while you are still flying in the air? A steady red light means you should give way and continue circling the airport for now. It is not your turn to land yet, or there is another plane currently on the runway. Point 11. What is the definition of aviate in the emergency rule? Aviate, navigate, and communicate. Aviate means your first priority is to keep the airplane flying at a safe airspeed. If you stop flying the plane to talk on the radio, you might stall and crash. 12. Why should you climb higher if you find yourself lost in an unfamiliar area today? Climbing higher helps you see further landmarks and improves the range of your radio signals. It also gives you more time to think and more options if your engine happens to fail. 13. What should you do with your fuel mixture if you are trying to restart a failed engine? You should move the mixture to the full rich position to ensure the engine gets fuel. Many engine failures happen because the pilot left the mixture too lean for the current altitude. 14. Is it legal to break an FAA rule if you are handling a real emergency in flight? Yes, the pilot in command can deviate from any rule to meet the needs of an emergency. Your safety is more important than the rules, but you might have to write a report later. 15. What is Squawk 7500 inches used for in the world of aviation and air traffic control? Code 7500 is the special transponder code used to signal that the airplane is being hijacked. This is a silent way to tell the ground that someone is forcing the pilot to fly. 16. What should you do if you accidentally enter a cloud while flying under VFR rules? You should keep your wings level and slowly turn the plane 180 degrees to exit. Do not panic, but trust your flight instruments and turn back toward the clear sky immediately. 17. If you see a flashing green light from the tower while you are in the air, what does it mean? A flashing green light means that you should return to the airport for landing. It is a signal to come back and wait for the steady green light to actually land. 18. What is the risk of target fixation when you are looking for a place to land? It is the danger of focusing only on one spot and missing better landing areas nearby. Pilots often get nervous and pick the first field they see, even if it has hidden wires. 19. Why must you avoid taking off immediately after a large heavy jet has departed the runway? You must wait because the wake turbulence can linger over the runway and flip your plane. Usually, waiting 2 minutes is enough time for dangerous air vortices to move or disappear. Please leave suggestions in the comment section to improve. You can get the full course by checking the link in the description. Welcome to part 6, the final part of our course, where we will talk about the last few rules you need to be a great pilot. Flying is not just about moving the controls, but it is also about making smart choices for your health and safety. Every pilot must follow the IMSAFE checklist to make sure they are fit to fly before every single trip. The letter I stands for illness, so you should never fly if you have a cold or a fever. M is for medication, because many common drugs can make you feel sleepy or slow your reaction time. S is for stress, and you should stay on the ground if you are worried about work or money. A is for alcohol, which we already learned is a huge danger for every pilot in the sky. F is for fatigue, which means being too tired to make good decisions during a difficult landing. I is for emotion, because getting angry or very sad can distract you from the important flight tasks. To fly safely, you must also understand how your body reacts to the high altitude and the thin air. Hypoxia is a very dangerous condition, where your brain does not get enough oxygen while you fly high. You might feel happy or dizzy at first, but soon you will not be able to think clearly at all. To prevent this, pilots use supplemental oxygen when they fly above 12,500 feet for a long time. Another danger is carbon monoxide, which is an odorless gas that can leak from a broken cabin heater. If you start to feel a headache or get blurred vision, shut off the heater and open the windows. Hyperventilation is another problem, often caused by stress or breathing too fast during a scary emergency. You can fix this by talking out loud, or breathing into a small paper bag to slow down. Before you finish your training, you must also learn about how to keep your airplane records perfectly clean. Every flight you take must be recorded in your logbook, especially the hours you need for your license. You must record the date, the total time, the destination, and the type of plane you flew that day. You also need to record any flight training you received from your flight instructor during your lessons. Once you become a private pilot, you can fly anywhere in the United States without ANY special permission. You are now part of a special group of people who can see the world from a very different view. Fly, learn, we need to practice, repeat, until you are the best pilot you can possibly be. Point 1. What does the S stand for in the IMSAFE checklist for pilot health and safety? The S stands for stress, which can distract a pilot from flying the plane safely today. If you are too worried about personal problems, you might miss a very important safety step. Point 2. What is the main danger of carbon monoxide when you are flying in a small airplane? Carbon monoxide is an invisible and odorless gas that can make a pilot lose consciousness. It usually leaks from a broken heater, so you must open the windows to get fresh air. Point 3. What should a pilot do if they start to feel the effects of hypoxia at high altitude? You must immediately descend to a lower altitude, where the air has more oxygen for you. Getting to thick air quickly is the best way to make your brain start working correctly again. Point 4. How does hyperventilation affect a pilot, and how can you stop it from getting worse? It happens when you breathe too fast, and you can stop it by breathing into a bag. Breathing slowly or talking out loud helps your body get the right balance of gases back. Point 5. Do you have to log every single flight after you have earned your private pilot license? No, you only have to log flights that show you are current or meet new requirements. While most pilots log everything for fun, the law only requires logs for certificates or currency. 6. What is spatial disorientation, and when is it most likely to happen to a pilot? It is when your brain gets confused about which way is up while flying in clouds. This usually happens when you cannot see the horizon, and you must trust your flight instruments. Point 7. Can you fly a plane if you have a common cold, and you took some nasal spray? You should not fly, because the medicine or the cold can cause ear pain during descent. Changes in air pressure can cause your eardrums to hurt, or even pop if you are sick. Point 8. What is the E in the IMSAFE checklist, and why is it important for a pilot? The stands for emotion, which ensures you are in a calm state of mind for flying. Being very upset or angry can lead to get there-itis, where you take dangerous risks to land. Point 9. How long should you wait to fly after you have gone scuba diving in the deep ocean? You must wait at least 12 to 24 hours to avoid getting the bends in flight. Nitrogen bubbles can form in your blood if you go from high pressure water to low pressure air. Point 10. What is the definition of fatigue, and why is it so dangerous for a landing? Fatigue is being extremely tired, which makes you react slowly to changes in the wind. A tired pilot is more likely to flare too high, or forget to put the landing gear down. Point 11. What should you do if your passenger starts to feel motion sickness during a bumpy flight? You should give them fresh air, and tell them to look at the distant horizon. Focusing on a still point far away helps the inner ear and the eyes agree again. Point 12. Does a private pilot need to carry their logbook every time they go for a flight? No, you do not need to carry your logbook unless you are a student pilot on solo. You can leave your logbook safely at home as long as you have your license and ID. Point 13. What is scuba diving rule for a flight that goes above 8,000 feet? You must wait 24 hours if your flight will take you to high altitudes after diving. The higher you go, the more dangerous the nitrogen bubbles become for your heart and brain. Point 14. What are the symptoms of hypoxia that a pilot might notice while flying high? You might feel a false sense of well-being, or notice that your fingernails are turning blue. These are signs that your body is starving for oxygen, and you must act very quickly. Point 15. What is the legal limit for alcohol in your blood while you are acting as a pilot? Your blood alcohol level must be less than 0.04%, according to the FAA legal rules. This is much stricter than the limit for driving a car, because flying ice much harder. Point 16. How often should you check your physical health with an FAA-authorized medical doctor? You should check every 2 to 5 years, depending on your age and your license type. This ensures that any hidden health problems are found before they cause an accident in flight. 17. What is aeronautical decision making, and why do we teach it to every new pilot? It is a systematic approach to the mental process used by pilots to consistently determine the best course of action. Using a set process helps you avoid common traps, like trying to impress your friends with maneuvers. Point 18. What is the hazardous attitude called resignation, and how do you fix it? Resignation is thinking you cannot change the outcome, and you fix it by knowing you can help. You must never give up, because there is always something you can do to fly safely. Point 19. What does the M in IMSAFE stand for regarding your daily habits before a flight? The M stands for medication, including any over-the-counter pills you took for a small headache. Even simple pills can make you drowsy, so you must check if they are safe for flying. These questions come with full explanations, which will help you get your certification on the first try. Please leave suggestions in the comment section to improve. You can get the full course by checking the link in the description below.